Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 26, the last chapter. And today we're on text number 18. So I'll just read it out and then we can do the word for word later. Yasvitha va asan vibhaj Yasnati yat kinchano panatam anirmita panchayajno vyasa samstitha saparatra krimi bhojane narakadhame nipatati tatra Satha sahasra yojane krimi kunde krimi bhuta svayam krimi bhir eva bhak samanah krimi bhojano yavat tat aparat tapra hutado nirvesanam Atmanam yatate yate. So we'll do the synonyms together. Yata, any person who, to, but, iha, in this life, va, or, asam, vibhajya, without dividing. Asnati, eats. Yat, kinchana, whatever. Upanatam, obtained by Krishna's grace. Anirmita, not performing. Pancha yagna, the 5 kinds of sacrifice. Vyasa, with the crows. Samstutaha, who is described as equal. Saha, such a person. Paratra, in the next life. Krimi bhojane, named Krimi Bhojana. Naraka adhame, into the most abominable of all hells. Nipatati, falls down. Tatra, there. Satha, sahasra, yojane, measuring 100,000 yojanas or 800,000 miles. Krimi kunde, in a leg of worms. Krimi bhuta, becoming one of the worms. Svayam, he himself. Krimi bhi, by the other worms. Ever, certainly. Bhaksya manaha, being eaten. Krimi bhojana, eating worms. Yavat, as long as. Tat, that lake is wide. Aprathuta, unshared and unoffered food. Adha, one who eats. Anirvesam, who has not performed atonement. Atmanam, to himself. Yathayate, gives pain. Translation, purport by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. A person is considered no better than a crow if after receiving some food, he does not divide it among guests, old men and children, but simply eats it himself, or if he eats it without performing the 5 kinds of sacrifice. After death, he is put into the most abominable hell, known as Krimi Bhojana. In that hell is a lake 100,000 yojanas, or 800,000 miles, wide and filled with worms. He becomes a worm in that lake and feeds on the other worms there, who also feed on him. Unless he atones for his actions before his death, such a sinful man remains in the hellish lake of Krimi Bhojana for as many years as there are yojanas on the width of the lake. Okay, let's try to go over the translation of that one. You all got it, right? Anyway, let's go over the translation. It's very powerful. Translation. Please repeat after me. A person is considered no better than a crow if after receiving some food, he does not divide it among guests, old men and children, but simply eats it himself. Or if he eats it without performing the 5 kinds of sacrifice. After death, he is put into the most abominable hell, known as Krimi Bhojana. In that hell is a lake, 100,000 yojanas, or 800,000 miles wide, and filled with worms. He becomes a worm in that lake and feeds on the other worms there. He also feeds on who also feed on him. Unless he atones for his actions before his death, such a sinful man remains in the hellish lake of Krimi Bhojana for as many years as there are yojanas in the width of the lake. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 3:13, Yajna Sista Sina Santo Muchyante Sarvakil Bisha Bujante Tetav Gham Papa Ya Papchanti Atmakaranat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is first offered for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. All food is given to us by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Eko bahunam jo vidadadikaman. The Lord supplies everyone with the necessities of life. Therefore, we should acknowledge His mercy by performing yajna or sacrifice. This is the duty of everyone. Indeed, the sole purpose of life is to perform yajna. According to Krishna 3:9, Yajna tat karmano netra lokayam karma bandhana dadatam karma konteya mukta sangam samachara. Work done as sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work binds one to this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain unattached and free from bondage. If we don't perform yajna and distribute prasad to others, our lives are condemned. Only after performing yajna and distributing the prasad to all dependents, children, brahmanas and old men, should one eat. However, one who cooks only for himself or his family is condemned, along with everyone he feeds. After death, he is put into the hell known as Krimi Bhojana. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayaham Tadatti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Tam Chajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanamascha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Desatari Vancha Kalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So before we start, I'd like to humbly ask the blessings of all the devotees, especially the senior devotees seated here, so that we may say something to glorify the Srimad Bhagavatam and for our own purification. So we're really discussing some very interesting aspects of cosmology. We are to the end of the cosmological era, the 5th canto, the last chapter. And having discussed that, we're at the most graphic aspect of material creation. The very reason that the living entity comes into this material world is that he tries to enjoy. But as soon as he tries to enjoy, he incurs karmic reaction. And that karmic reaction allows him to vacillate, to move up and down, either to the upper 6 planetary systems or to the lower 7 planetary systems. But if he does really bad activity, where he has to really atone for a long period of time, then he's sent to this place that we're hearing about now in this section of the Bhagavatam, the hellish planets. So it's a feature that is prevalent in all theologies of this world. All religions of this world have this concept of hell and hellish planet. But very few actually understand and explain it, elucidate it in the way the Srimad Bhagavatam does. Most religious traditions use it as a tool to preach using the concept of fear. Because fear is one of the most powerful, it's a primal emotion in the human psyche. In the human being, fear is one of the most powerful emotions we can experience. So to use that to promote or to preach with is a very powerful tool, especially when one can see what are the reactions that are coming. So it's a very, very powerful way that some of the other religions use to promote, especially those who don't want to develop that loving relationship with God. Those who are, what do they call, non-compliant, disobedient to the laws of the Lord, of God. So this avenue of preaching is used then. If you don't surrender to, then you are going to experience this. So it's a very powerful tool that many traditions use. I was earlier on yesterday actually, I was talking to Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu. So he was saying, he was asking me, so which hellish planet will you go to if you don't follow a certain religious tradition? Because they use this a lot. If you don't believe in certain person, you'll go to hell. So Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu was asking me, which hellish planet then you would go to if you follow that tradition? So I said, well, I'm not too sure because it's not stated as one as the 28. Maybe Krimi Bhojana, I don't know. Although there is one hellish planet, if you don't follow the Vedic injunctions, then you go to that planet. So something close. So I'd like to ask you then, is this concept of hell just an allegorical statement? Is it just an allegory? Like we heard Puranjan. Is it like a story? Or can it actually be geopositioned? Can you find it in the cosmological structure of the universe? Well, no other religious tradition seems to explain it except the Vedic scripture and the Srimad Bhagavatam. Because here we're actually finding the geoposition of the hellish planet, which is very powerful, because many other traditions, like in Christianity, it's described that hell is a lake, or there's some concept of hell, but not a lot. It's not in detail. Islamic and Buddhist traditions give some idea, but not as much as in detail as we're getting in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's why when Prabhupada went to the West and he would try to explain this concept of hell to people, then how did he phrase it? Well, hell means where there is no newspaper. Where there is no newspaper. Because especially when he was speaking to those miners kind of people. So how do you explain it? Is it just some allegory? It seems to be more than that. So hell is a place of reformation. As we understand it as a philosophical concept, what is the purpose of such a place? Well, just like in a country, you have a prison, which is also called the correctional services of the country, which the government, the national government, actually creates for those who are disobedient to the laws of the country. So too, those who are disobedient to universal laws, the laws that govern the universe, the laws that govern nature, there is a place where they go, and that is the hellish planets. So that's a similar kind of understanding of how we can understand it. So having said that then, is there such a place as hell? So let's try to see from our Vedic authorities, where is the geographical location of this place? So
there is the Garbhodak Ocean with Anantashesha and Garbhodakashayi Vishnu.
So this is Sataputta Prabhu, one of our authorities on Vedic cosmology. So he's explaining this point geographically, like a GPS. Where would we locate it in the universal structure?
These divine incarnations are said to be inaccessible to persons who lack the qualifications to see them. The Garbhodak or amniotic ocean fills the lower half, the sphere of the Brahmanda.
So we're describing the it's not Garbhadan, this ocean that Vishnu lives on, resides on, and this is below the planetary structure. In between there is an area in which the hellish planets are located.
If we interpret Bhumandala as the ecliptic plane, then this ocean must lie in all directions in the sky to the south of the ecliptic.
So this is south of that. In that area, in the southern direction, there's a specific geo positioning. Let's see if we can find it. Jai Shri Shri Radha Shyam Krishna Balaram Gaur Nitai Ki Jai.
Between the Garbhadak ocean and Bhumandala are located the hellish worlds, and
so in between there is located the hellish worlds,
Pitriloka, the realm of the ancestral spirits.
Near the Pitriloka.
The Vishnu Purana describes a path through the sky to Pitra.
So in the Vishnu Purana, the actual position of it is given, where it is found.
Pitriloka. This starts just below the ecliptic, near the constellations Scorpio and Sagittarius.
So in astronomy, near the constellation of Scorpio and Sagittarius.
And it extends southward to the star Canopus.
It sends southward to the star of Canopus. So we're getting an actual positioning here.
Known as Agastya in Sanskrit.
And in the Sanskrit terminology, it's called the star of Augusta. So that's where the actual position of the hellish planet is.
There is likewise a path of the gods, which extends north of the ecliptic to the constellation of the seven sages, which we know as the Big Dipper.
So, just to give you a pictorial idea of it, this is the ecliptic diagram of what is described as a planetary structure, the seven lower planets. There's Pitriloka here. So, where exactly would the hellish planets be located? This is the curve that he was talking about of Scorpio and Sagittarius, and this is where the hellish planets are found. So in the opposite direction, northerly, now this is south, if you're facing north and you're trying to leave this material world, then you will have to go through this pathway here, which is the seven sages, or what is called in Western astronomy as the Big Dipper. We've covered this section recently also called Shushumara. And if you have to go through that, then you come to the pole star, and through the pole star is the avenue to go to the spiritual world. So you can see how precise the Vedic scriptures have given it. It's absolutely precise. No other religious tradition in the world has described the hellish planets like as detailed as the Vedas have. So having said this then, how do we understand the personality of Yamaraj being a Mahajan in control of this place? Because he doesn't actually reside there. He resides in Pitriloka, or on his planet, in his kingdom. And it's interesting, in the Mahabharata, it's described how Pandu, the father of the Pandavas, couldn't attain Swargaloka. So he actually went to this planet of Yamaloka. But that Yamaloka is not the Yamaloka of the hellish planet. It's Yamaraj's kingdom. And he's an associate of Yamaraj. And this is described in the Mahabharata like this. So, although he has associates such as the Yamadutas, he also has associates such as Pandu, Maharaj Pandu. So it's very interesting to see the different dichotomies which balance out the Vedic cosmology as is described in the Vedas. In the Western tradition, the description is given that of a philosopher called Dante in Dante's Inferno. And this is used, it's not even a spiritual description, it's somebody's poetic description. And this is used as the master description of the hellish planets, the way he describes it. He describes it as 9 planetary systems, and you digress or regress to the bottom one in that way. Whereas the Vedas, being authorized and authentic, describes it as how many? 28 we heard of. And of today we're hearing of this creamy Bhojana. So it's using the aspect of pain It's using the concept of pain as a reformatory practice, because anyone in this material world doesn't want to feel pain. And the way Krishna has described the material world as dukhalayam sasvatam, it's the place of difficulties. It's not happiness here. But being within the Vedic practice, one can still live very happily and comfortably here. And that's why these descriptions are given. So let's try to read further. I'm going to speed it up a bit because of time. Yes. Okay. So in the present time that we are, this Purushottam month, it's a wonderful opportunity to reflect on what could have been our status if we were back in the material world as we were, if we didn't come to Krishna consciousness. Is one of the, especially coming to Vrindavan after a few months and being exposed to this kind of information coming from the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's a quick reality check of where my life could have been if I didn't take to the practice, or if I somehow didn't connect to Krishna consciousness. It would have been a very difficult situation. So the practice of Krishna consciousness is offering us such a great opportunity, so much of mercy. In South Africa recently, one of the senior devotees there passed away, Shamlal Prabhu, in about a year ago. And while the devotees were doing kirtan for him in the intensive care ward, so this intensive care ward is divided into two parts for two people. So you have your own section and the other person has his own section. And as the devotees were doing kirtan, all of a sudden the nurse and the doctor ran in. So they were wondering what's going on. And as the devotees started to check, the kirtan started to pick up, the person in the other ward left his body. Just like that. So who can understand the mercy of Lord Chaitanya? Just being in that environment, this person has got the grace not to go down to the hellish planets ever again, to go back to the spiritual world. So Prabhupada starts this translation. A person is considered no better than a crow if after receiving some food he does not divide it amongst guests, old men and children, but simply eats it for himself. Now, who knows better about cooking and eating than Hare Krishnas? We know the science of it. It's a whole science of gathering the food, preparing the food, meditating on Krishna and offering the food, and honoring it in a spiritual way, karma-free. This is a very great technology that very few people know about. You may consume vegetarian food, doesn't mean it's karma-free. So this is a very great science of honoring food. And food is also a loving exchange. Yadati pratigrinati guyamakati prichati. One of the bhunkte pujayate cheva satvidi pritilakshana. These loving exchanges between devotees. So one of that is offering some food items also. But what we're hearing about here is selfish consciousness. Somebody who's offering, who's consuming and gathering for himself. So somebody who's self-conceited, selfish, not considering the greater world and not actually being part of the world. Because if you're selfish, you can't be part of the world, the greater family. Because you're always concerned, your consciousness is always concerned on yourself. That's to about the extent of which you are conscious. Whereas a Mahatma is broad-minded, his consciousness is broadband, and he conceives the consciousness of the whole planet. Therefore, an expression of that is compassion. So Krishna describes this as one of the gateways to hell. Lust, anger, and greed. In one verse, it describes at least two of these as Mahatmana, Mahapapma, Mahasana, Mahapapma, the great sin that descends upon man is this greed, lust, anger. So today we're hearing of greed. And in the 16th chapter, verse 21, Krishna delineates this very clearly of how powerful this is. Divine and demoniac nature. This is the nature of the demoniac consciousness. So a Brahmana, his mood is to distribute. And what does he distribute? He distributes knowledge and he distributes prasadam. Actually, in the traditional temples, like in Tirupati, in Sri Rangam, I've seen it there also, that the senior Vaishnavas of the community, the Brahmana priests, they are the ones who distribute the prasad. They are the ones who serve the prasad. We know how difficult it is to get somebody to serve, right? During prasadam time, everybody is hungry and wants to take prasadam. But the etiquette is that the senior Vaishnavas, it's such an honorable service to serve the devotees. It's such an honorable thing. Dasanudasyam. It's such an honorable thing to serve the Vaishnavas with your own hands. The perfection of touch. What is the perfection of touch? To touch a Vaishnav. So how will we perfect this? So we can get that opportunity by offering service. Just like we have Padasevanam. So Padasevanam can be understood in two ways. One, by offering direct service to the deity, Padasevanam. And two, by using your feet to do parikram and walk in the holy places. So just like that, if we get a chance to serve the devotees, don't miss this chance. Something that comes to mind that really struck me very vividly during the 40th anniversary is that many of the Prabhupada disciples, that's a rare species these days. And they're only going to be amongst us for the next 10 to 20 years. After that, it will be so rare to see one of them. One of them who got Prabhupada's mercy directly by Diksha. So if we get a chance to serve such a personality, don't miss it. Because they will be like in the Bible, you'll hear of Matthew and James and John. These personalities will be like that in time. Because Krishna consciousness is going to go for 10,000 years. So if we miss this chance, we could miss something very great. Because they have received Prabhupada's mercy directly through Diksha. And if we can serve that, through whatever lackings we have, that can be substituted by Prabhupada's mercy directly on us. So it's a nice point to meditate on. And part of the Vedic culture is also that of giving. They were named like that. Yasoda, Kirtida, one who gives fame, one who gives wealth. These were the names of people. So you can see the cultural understanding and the practical application, both are together in the Vedic aspect. So it's a very powerful culture of service, of humanity, of environment, of understanding the oneness of nature as all of Krishna's family, of Krishna's servants. We see the same idea with Madhavendra Puri. When he came to Govinda Kund, then the ladies they saw, there's a sadhu here, we should offer something. And then they sent the milk, as Krishna had said. So one Maharaj was telling me once, he says, it's possible to have a feast every day. And I said, how is that, Maharaj? How is it possible? It's costly. He says, if we have a Namahata with 30 families, each family can prepare once a month for the whole 30 families. And in thus, every day you can have a feast. So in the evening we gather, we can have Sandhya Arti, we can have some Krishna Katha, and have a fabulous feast every day. I thought it was a good idea. So if somebody is eager to apply such a concept, it will be very nice. We also see the opposite effect in the Vedic tradition with Amrish Maharaj, who tried to prevent such a situation of happening, where Durvasa Muni had come and he had to honor some water because of Ekadasi, but we know the etiquette. So we see that also happening, even in Draupadi. So we're getting a glimpse of the culture in totality. It's a very deep culture of service. And this is the ultimate goal. This is why it trains us in service. So if we understand the phenomena of service, this is what we ultimately do in the spiritual world. Sevanam. And that's why each one of the 5 primary rasas is governed by this concept of dasyam, of servitude. You cannot engage in any one of the 5 rasas if you are not serving. So the Vedic culture helps us to bring us to this point. Prabhupada continues, or if he eats it without performing the 5 kinds of sacrifice. So what are the 5 kinds of sacrifice? Let's read here. In the ordinary course of life, man does many actions which willingly or unwillingly cause harm. If you're going to act, you're going to get reaction, either good or bad, you're going to get reaction. To other beings. In atonement for such actions, 5 forms of yajna have been prescribed by the Shastras. What are these? These are Deva Yajna, offering yajna to the Devas. Pitru Yajna, offering yajna to the Pitrus, the ancestors. Bhuta Yajna, offering yajna to other living entities. Manusya Yajna, offering yajna to other beings, other persons. And Rishi Yajna or Brahmana Yajna. So offering them yajna also, because they hold the Vedic wealth in the form of Shastra, and they live by it. They live by it. The 2 types of Bhagavatas, the book Bhagavat and the devotee Bhagavat. So therefore we also acknowledge them. Prabhupada goes on. After death he is put into the most abominable hell, known as, yes, Krimi Bhojana. Now, when I heard of this name at first, and I was trying to conceive of this, and I said, well, creamy I know. I think everybody knows creamy in the Western language, right? Creamy, right? And Bhojana, if you travel around, then you eat at Bhojana Nala, at like restaurants or eat out places. So before I read what it actually meant, just by hearing it, I put it 2 together, creamy Bhojana. So it's a very creamy meal, nice prasadam, right? But it didn't mean that at all. So this is just like a superimposed image of what this entities there may look like. So they're not very friendly and they're not very appetizing. So this is what is described of. This is not spaghetti. This is Krimi Bhojana. It's this lake that is being described of 100 yojanas, 800,000 miles. So from here to here is like 800,000 miles. That's without the depth. If we add volume into it, how deep is this place? Well, they didn't give us that stat. And this place is filled with these worms kind of creatures that are there. So it's not a very pleasurable place to be in. So what would you eat there? Well, you eat what is there. That's what's there. So I guess that's what you have to eat, right? So it's described here. He becomes a worm in that lake and feeds on other worms there, who also feed on him. So one of the laws of nature of the material world is jivasya jiva jivanam, eat and be eaten. One living entity lives on the other. Now you can imagine what that must be like. You know, in Africa, I come from South Africa, right? So we have a lot of wildlife and game reserves. And if you go to these places, you can actually see firsthand what the experience must be like to be hunted down. What a lion, what is the environment like when a lion is preying on a on a defenseless animal. What is that environment like? And it gives you a vivid experience. Because as human beings, we are on top of the food chain, right? We eat everything else. So being that, we don't have an experience of being hunted. But having that experience will be a very powerful awakening. That's why religionists use that as fear. To say, well, this is what can happen to you. Because if you fear, you will completely realign your life. You completely realign your consciousness. And if you realign your consciousness, this is Krishna consciousness. So let's read on here. Unless he atones for his actions before his death. So one may say, well, I'll live my life and I'll do like Ajamil, right? Live my life through, see it through, and at the end I'll become spiritual, like most people say. I'll become spiritual at the end. And even as devotees, we fall into that trap of being a little lackadaisical towards practicing Krishna consciousness seriously. And as we practicing it and just being carried along by this sangha of other devotees, well, it may not be the best choice. Because we may miss out on what Krishna consciousness is really offering, especially here in Vrindavan Dham. We have the best deities, the best darshan, we have the best environment for sadhu sangha. In the Dham itself, we have the best association, the best prasadam, all of these things which are favorable. But if we don't focus our consciousness, Vivasatmika buddhi eke kurunandana bahushaka hoyanantascha buddhiyor vivasyam. If we don't focus in optimizing the opportunity we've been given, then we may even lose out on Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Because that's why he has come. If this avatar can't save us, nobody else can. Because he's come for us, for people like us, for the consciousness of human beings like us, which is the current trend of the world. Now we know in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the story of Kala Krishna Das. He was directly in the association of Lord Chaitanya, and still Maya pulled him away. The Bhattaharis pulled him away. Can you get better than that? Directly in the association of Lord Chaitanya, and still he was pulled away. So don't lose this chance, dear devotees. Please use especially this Purushottam month. How do you feel? Many of you are performing vratas. Many of you are chanting extra rounds. Isn't it amazing, this spiritual experiences that you're having through this, where the bodily demands are less, and it's so much more easier to repress it or put it aside when the ambience of the environment is so spiritually surcharged. So if we feel like this, why can't we always feel like this? Because once Purushottam month is over, we'll go back to our routine. And as we carry on with routine, then our Krishna consciousness also becomes routine. Our experiences also become routine. And that's when we don't want to be in that routine state, but by default, nature pulls us down. By the three modes of nature, we get pulled back down in this way. But if we want to have that wonderful experience like we're having now in Purushottam month, then it's going to need the effort like we are putting in now. If we put that same effort, why we won't get the same result? Krishna will oblige naturally. So let's not lose this focus that we've gained momentum in 1 month to achieve. Let it roll on. Kartik is coming up. Set yourself another small goal. Set yourself something to reach up to Kartik. And then Kartik is there. Go for it. Go for Kartik. And when Kartik comes, then we feel that exhilaration, that exuberance that comes with the spirit of Kartik. That will carry us further. And then when we look back and say, wow, sometimes it's healthy to turn around and look back and see how far I've come. A little inventory. It's really healthy. if we want to experience this, because time doesn't stop. Time doesn't stop. It continues. And the more we think, no, I'll procrastinate it, I'll get it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, I'm in the Dham, I'll hear it tomorrow. This is on the mental level, and this is what pulls us away. This is what robs us of the opportunity of being in this environment. Because we can be right here, and we can be in a state of not being Krishna conscious. How sad would that be? The devotees of the world will do anything to be where we are right now in Vrindavan Dham. They have to get their association through a camera, through the internet. We are directly here. And if we can use these moments, especially these Madhavatiti Bhakti Janani, these auspicious days, auspicious months. Purushottam is 16 times more merciful than Kartik. That's a lot. So if we want mercy, we will get it. So do we really want it? That's the point, because if we really want it, then we'll make amends to work towards it. Like we did right now, like we're doing right now. We're chanting extra, we're making amends for mercy. Krishna, I need your mercy. Without your mercy, what would my life be made of? What would my practice be made of? If Kala Krishna Das can be pulled away right in your association, what chance do I stand? I have to constantly be in that fire, the Sankirtan Yagya, the Sankirtan fire. And if I'm in that state constantly, then I'm completely in my constitutional position, where I want to be, where genuine joy and happiness exists. Let's try to read on quickly for a few minutes. Prabhupada says here, such a sinful man remains in the hellish lake of Krimi Bhojana for as many years as there are yojanas on the width of the lake. So time equals distance. The time factor there, 800,000 miles is equal to 800,000 years. That is an inconceivably long time. That is really long. So Prabhupada says here in the purport, others who offer, he says here, others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. All food is given to us by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Eko bahunam jo vidadadi kaman, nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam, eko bahunam jo vidadadi kaman. He's the one who's providing everything to everyone. So this is the purpose of yagya. This is the purpose of why we do yagya, and what is the purpose of yagya. Now I'd like to ask you a question in conclusion. If you had to look back on your life, if you had to observe all the water that you have drunk, all the food that you have eaten, all the air that you have breathed, all the water that you use to bathe and use, and if you had to pay a tax for that, how much would that be? That would be a phenomenal amount of money. So yagya is a form of universal tax. To say thank you firstly to the Lord for providing these things, because these are necessities of the human life, of life. These are necessities of life. So yagya is a form of tax. But not only that, if it is performed, it leads to higher awakening of consciousness. As it develops, like Krishna starts with this in the 3rd chapter, verse 9. Yagyana tat karmano netra lokayam karma bandhana yadatam karma konteya mukta sangam samachara. Yagya has to be done as work. If not, it is binding. So if you don't want to be bound, then you have to do yagya. Okay, I'm doing yagya. But who is this done for? Oh, it's done for Vishnu. Who is Vishnu? This is what it's leading to pick up the consciousness of the human being. Therefore, in the 9th chapter, we get these two verses, 9:26, 9:27. Yad karosi yad asnasi, yad johosi dadasi yad, tat tapasatu konteya, yad kurusva madarpanam. So Krishna is saying there, whatever you do, whatever you give away, whatever austerities you do that as an offering to me. So now you have a person. It's not just yajna anymore, it's a person. But deeper than that would be to offer with love and devotion. Pashpam patra pushpam phalam toyam yome bhakte prayojati tataham bhakti uparitam masnami prayatatmanah. So if we have to come to that point of the devotional aspect. And this is what Krishna consciousness is giving us. The opportunity for devotional practice. And in that devotional mindset, one gets to experience Krishna. Directly Krishna, the Supreme Being who is controlling this whole cosmos as a plenary expansion of himself, as Vishnu, Mahavishnu. So he's offering us an opportunity to experience him as a person. So personality means person. And to interrelate with that person means through the practice of devotional service. So the hellish planets is given for this point, to make us realize this is the gift of human life that we have. It's so rare. It's so rare to come to this point of human life. And then when to come to that point, to come to the point of devotional service is even more rare. And to practice devotional service in Vrindavan Dham is the most rare thing one can get. Most rare. So if we appreciate what has been given, more will be given. And if we utilize that from the heart, do the best we can with what has been given, appreciate the opportunities, the facilities, and the environment that has been given. I mean, who wouldn't do anything to be where we are right now in Vrindavan Dham, in the world, especially in the devotee community? So how has your life been designed in this way, that you are at this moment in time, not in Krimi Bhojana, where we could have been, but here in Vrindavan Dham? So let's utilize this opportunity to the best we can. And in this lifetime, as Prabhupada said, we can go back to Godhead in this lifetime. So thank you very much for your attentiveness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we run over time, but I'll be here for a few minutes if anybody wants to discuss anything or ask some questions. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you so much for your class. Your class always have extra things because you always bring material. I'm a very sentimental person, so when I think about the hellish planets, I'm trying to understand the karma.
Yes.
And then I'm reading more and I understand like everything has a purnisme,